In 1968, a scientist built a paradise. Everything a living creature could ever need was provided in abundance. Food appeared automatically. Water was always available. There were no predators, no disease, no scarcity of any kind. It was, by every measurable standard, a perfect world. And then he watched it destroy itself. His name was John B. Calhoun. He was a behavioral researcher at the National Institute of Mental Health. And what he created was not a utopia for humans. It was an enclosed universe for mice. He called it Universe 25. And what happened inside it over the next few years would become one of the most disturbing and debated experiments in the history of behavioral science. The mice were given everything: space to begin with, enough food dispensers to feed thousands, nesting material, clean water, no infections, no overcrowding at the start. Calhoun simply sealed the enclosure, introduced 8 healthy mice, and waited. At first, everything went exactly as expected. The population doubled, then doubled again. The mice thrived, they bred. They built social structures, they explored every corner of their new universe. For a while, Universe 25 looked like it was working. Then the population hit a critical threshold. The physical space was still adequate. Food was still abundant. But something else began to run out. Something that cannot be manufactured or dispensed or refilled. Social space. The invisible architecture of roles, relationships, hierarchies, and meaningful connections that any social creature needs to function. And when that ran out, something in the mice began to break. The males stopped defending territory, not because there was nothing to defend, but because the social script that gave territory its meaning had collapsed. Females began attacking their own young, not out of starvation or threat, but out of a kind of behavioral static, a breakdown in the ancient programs that governed care and connection. And then there appeared a group that Calhoun would name with a word that has stayed with researchers ever since. He called them the beautiful ones. The beautiful ones were mice that had withdrawn entirely from the social world of Universe 25. They did not fight. They did not mate. They did not compete for hierarchy or territory or connection. They spent their days eating, sleeping, and grooming themselves into immaculate condition. Their fur was perfect. Their bodies were healthy. They showed no visible signs of physical disease. But they were, in every functional sense, gone. They had opted out of existence itself. Not dramatically, not violently, quietly. One grooming session at a time. Calhoun called this phenomenon the behavioral sink. The point at which a population, overwhelmed by density and the collapse of meaningful social roles, stops functioning as a society and begins dissolving into isolated, purposeless individuals. And here is the part that should stop you cold. The population of Universe 25 never recovered. Calhoun introduced new mice. He tried to restart the social dynamics. Nothing worked. The behaviors that had collapsed did not return. The knowledge of how to be a mouse in a functioning mouse society had been lost. Not genetically, behaviorally. The culture of the mice had died, and without it, so did they. By the end, Universe 25 was silent. A perfect world with everything provided, and nothing left alive that knew what to do with it. Now here's the question you have been waiting for. Why does any of this matter to you? You are not a mouse. You do not live in an enclosure. You have agency and language and the full complexity of human consciousness. But look at what Calhoun was actually measuring. He was not measuring food. He was measuring meaning. He was measuring the conditions under which a social creature can maintain a functioning identity, a role that connects them to others, a sense of purpose that requires engagement with the world rather than withdrawal from it. And now, look at the world you actually live in. Physical needs met more completely than at any point in human history. Scarcity of food for most people in developed societies has been largely solved. Shelter, warmth, safety from predators, these have been solved. And yet, something else is not behaving the way the models predicted. The rates of social withdrawal are rising. The rates of young men in particular who have disengaged from work, from relationships, from reproduction, from civic life, are climbing in ways that have no clean economic explanation. They are fed. They are sheltered. They are physically safe. And significant numbers of them are becoming, in Calhoun's term, beautiful ones. Psychologist Jean Twenge at San Diego State University has spent decades tracking what she calls the loneliness epidemic. Her data shows that the sharpest increases in reported loneliness, depression, and social isolation began in the early 2000s, precisely when smartphone adoption crossed the threshold where most young people had constant access to a device that provided stimulation without genuine social engagement. The food dispensers of our universe arrived, and a significant portion of the population stopped needing to leave their nest to eat. This is not a moral argument. Calhoun was not making a moral argument either. He was making a structural one. Social creatures are not built for abundance without friction. They are built for a world where meaningful roles require effort, where connection requires risk, where identity is forged through engagement with genuine difficulty. Remove the friction and you do not get happier mice. You get mice that forget how to be mice. The neuroscience here is not subtle. Your brain's reward circuitry was calibrated in an environment where effort preceded reward, where social bonding required physical presence, where identity was built through the doing of things that mattered to others. Dopamine was never designed to be triggered by a notification or a scroll. It was designed to reward navigation, pursuit, completion, connection. When you give the brain reward without the navigation, without the pursuit, without the completion, it does not feel grateful. It feels nothing. Or worse, it feels a kind of low-level static that looks remarkably like the behavioral patterns Calhoun documented in the latter stages of Universe 25. Researcher Sebastian Junger, in his work on tribe and belonging, arrived at the same conclusion from a different direction. He found that the modern epidemic of depression and anxiety is not explained by poverty or danger. Some of the lowest rates of reported depression in the world occur in places of genuine scarcity and real physical danger. What predicts well-being across cultures and across history is not comfort, it is belonging. The sense of being genuinely needed by a functioning social group. Remove the need and you remove the belonging. Remove the belonging and you begin to see the behavioral sink. None of this means the answer is to manufacture artificial hardship. Calhoun was not arguing that scarcity is good. He was arguing that social role is essential, that the identity of a social creature is not a private internal state. It is a function of the relationships and responsibilities and genuine contributions that connect it to a living community. You are not yourself in isolation. You become yourself through the friction of genuine engagement with others. Universe 25 ended in silence, but it did not have to. The mice that survived the longest, that maintained social function the deepest into the experiment, were the ones who had been part of early stable social structures, who had roles and hierarchies and genuine relationships before the behavioral sink took hold. The lesson was never that paradise destroys. The lesson was that paradise without purpose does. Tonight, somewhere in your world, someone is perfectly groomed and perfectly fed and perfectly comfortable. And they are disappearing. Not dramatically, not loudly. One screen at a time. One skipped invitation at a time. One day at a time until the days stop feeling like days and start feeling like nothing in particular. Calhoun named his experiment Universe 25 because it was his 25th attempt to build the perfect world. In all 25, the outcome was the same. The question he never answered, and the one that now belongs to you, is whether a social creature that understands what it is can choose differently than one that does not.